Hello everyone and welcome to another most impressive game from round 2 of this year's Norway Chess. We are in Classical and it is Fabiano Caruana versus Liren. So a world classical champion versus the only other guy rated over 2800, other than Magnus Carlsen. It's a really tough game. Fabiano surprises Ding straight out of the opening, but then something inexplainable happens. But you guys will be the judge of that as usual. To me, it looks like a move that you simply cannot miss. But for those of you who haven't seen the game, you guys will be the judge of that. So please share in the comments if you've spotted the threat in question. So let's check it out. Fabi with the white pieces opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by Ding, knight f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. The Italian game is on the board. We have knight to f6, the two knights defense, and d3. Again, the modern bishop's opening. No funny stuff with the knight to g5. We have bishop to c5, transposing into the Giuoco Pianissimo, and castles. We have knight b to d2 and the d6. We're not going to dwell too much on opening moves because we've seen this so many times, even on this channel. I'm pretty sure you guys already have a feeling that I'm constantly showing you the same game. c3, preparing b4, pawn to a5, stopping b4, and now h3 and h6. The usual pawn moves in the Giuoco Pianissimo, rook to e1, we have bishop to e6 challenging the bishop, and bishop to b5, and now queen to b8. Now once queen to b8 is played, now you even if you forgot, you know this variation, you're going after the f2 pawn, and the white's two most popular ideas here are to capture on c6 first, or to just go knight to f1. If you play knight to f1, then you have bishop to e3 ready, you can counter the battery, and not much happening. But here we have rook to e2. It's an incredibly rare move, and has been played once in top level chess. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave played it against Hikaru Nakamura in the Paris 2018 Rapid tournament. But that game went a little bit different than this one. So, okay, queen to a7, continuing in the same fashion. But then Maxime played bishop to a4. However, here Fabi plays bishop captures on c6. And it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. So, obviously, Fabi prepared this. And he still has an hour and 56 minutes on the clock. Players start with 2 hours. So, he only spent 4 minutes getting here. Ding also spent 4 minutes getting here. But let's see how much Ding takes on his next move. Obviously, not this one. This is a recapture. So, recapture. And now pawn to a4. And now let's see how long it takes Ding to make this next move. He plays knight to d7, and this move took him 35 minutes. So I think it's pretty fair to say that Ding is now out of book, and that he is playing the position as it unfolds. And okay, you're preparing maybe pawn to f5, but most likely not. Most likely you're just defending the e5 pawn and preparing pawn to d5. You have a double c pawn, so it makes sense to strike in the center. Okay, knight to f1, a standard move, of course, and pawn to d5. Fabi strikes back, pawn to d4. E captures on d4, and now knight captures on d4. We have queen to b6. Hard to say what this move does other than defending the c6 pawn, but I'm guessing that's enough to move the queen. And now bishop to e3. We have bishop captures on d4, bishop captures, and queen back. Sorry, now obviously not there. Queen back. Obviously not there. Queen back to b7, and now e captures on d5. And this is a very tricky move by Fabi if Ding captures with the bishop. But of course, Ding is the world classical champion. Of course, he doesn't do that. The problem with capturing with the bishop is this c4 move. And you freely give up more material because what you're doing is freeing up the c3 square. You want to put the bishop on c3 and you want to put the queen on d4, and this will be very strong. And also you get rid of this nasty battery going after your g2 pawn. And even if you go back, if you go back, then you just continue with bishop to c3. But if you capture, attack the rook, then rook e3 first, then the rook comes into the attack, bishop c3, queen d4, and it's just a very strong attack. Objectively, it will be winning for white. So, of course, Ding captures with the c pawn. He spent literally 0 time here. He undoubled his pawns. He's very happy, preparing pawn to c5. And Fabi throws in a knight to g3. The problem with c4 now, although it kind of has the same meaning, is this pawn to c5 move. And now your bishop is hanging. In the other line, if c5 would be played, this bishop would be here and the bishop would be attacked. So that's the difference. And if you play bishop c3, d4, and now all of a sudden it's Ding who's winning this game. So okay, Fabi goes knight to g3 and Ding goes rook 8 to e8. Okay, perfectly fine, equal position. Queen to d2 by Fabi and pawn to c5. Challenging the bishop, we have bishop back to e3, sidestepping the threat with, generating a threat of his own at the pawn on h6 might be captured, might not be captured. If you capture it, you know you're never losing this game. You might not win, but these two pawns that are defending the black king for the price of a bishop, you have at least a draw here. So of course King Ding defends that, and now rook 8 to e1. And here, queen to c6. Ding playing very, very strong chess. He's going after the a4 pawn. It is so far the only weakness in Fabi's position. And Fabi continues with bishop to f4. He sets a very nasty trap for Ding. If Fabi wasn't in a trap setting mood, he would probably play pawn to b4. b4, you know, as pretty much in any position, is the strongest move here. But, you know, it seems that players still don't understand that, regardless of how strong they are. The idea is just to free up the d4 square for the bishop, and that will be, in the long run, overwhelming. But here, bishop to f4 by Fabi, and Ding says, okay, all right, I'm just going to capture the pawn. Queen captures on a4. And it is a very cold-blooded capture. There's a lot of action on the board. You know, Ding just grabbing a pawn casually, but it is the strongest move recommended by the engine, so Ding, of course, knows what he's doing. So knight to f5 by Fabi, putting now a triple threat on this h6 pawn. And now we have to also mention the time on the clock here. Fabi has 44 minutes, Ding has 32 minutes. So you're not in time trouble. You have all the time in the world for a player of your strength, and you should play accordingly. And the only move for Ding here, not to run into serious trouble, is rook to g8. And now, okay, let's say it again. Continues, 96, you attack the rook comes to f8, you play queen d3 check, king moves, and now you could even see a repetition here. Let's say queen d2, you attack, king back to h7, you give a check, king goes back. Or if Fabi wants, he can continue pressing, but nothing there objectively. However, here Ding just played queen to c6. He said, all right, I snatched the pawn, I'm ready to push my a pawn, I have a very nice defensive setup, my queen will also be guarding the 6th rank. So, you know, life is good, but there's a problem. Now, the question for those of you who have not seen the game, what did Ding miss here? Because here, Ding's position just falls apart if Fabi finds the move in question, and Fabi played it pretty much instantly. So feel free to pause the video and figure out what the world champion Ding missed while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this incredibly difficult move to spot. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight captures not on h6 but on g7. That's the move that Ding missed, and now there doesn't seem much that the Ding can do. You've just lost a valuable pawn, the rook is attacked, the bishop is attacked, you really have to capture it. If you don't capture it, then of course Fabi just continues collecting. So king captures on g7 and bishop captures on h6 with check. Alright, king to h7 and Fabi takes the rook on f8, bishop captures on f8. So naturally, it's a sacrifice. Is it a good one? Well, you will have a rook for a bishop and knight. But here Ding just throws the game literally under the bus. He plays rook captures on f8, and if Ding was in a world champion mood, in a mood where you really, okay, you've made an error in judgment with this queen to c6 move, and you still want to give Fabi hell, because let's face it, you are the world champion. Of course, the entire world expects you to give everyone hell regardless of your position, like we've seen Magnus do so many times. But yeah, I mean, let me just show you what I mean by this. So if knight captures on f8 instead of Ding's rook captures on f8, it's still not clear. White is winning objectively, but Fabi has to find some very, very tricky moves to win this game. For example, queen g5, and after queen d7, pawn to f4. Okay, you are preparing pawn to f5 to grab the rook here. So pawn to f5 and now rook e3. Okay, you have to lift the rook. King to h8, now queen h5 check, knight to h7, also one of the nice things about having the knight on f8. Queen captures on f5, Fabi would sacrifice the queen here, and now after bishop captures, rook captures on e8 with check, knight to f8, or you give the queen right away, but that's not the best, knight to f8, and now after the queen is attacked, you have to give up the queen, otherwise rook captures on f8 will be checkmate. So you will take the queen, rook captures, and now let's say knight to g6, and okay, white is still objectively winning here. He has 5 pawns and a rook, you have a bishop and knight and 3 pawns. But okay, it's still possible to play this. I mean, a world champion does not resign here. But Ding played rook captures on f8, and now the rest is history. Fabi goes queen to g5, and Ding goes rook to e8. Rook to g8 also doesn't really help you. If rook to g8, you just go queen to h4 check, and then it's pretty much the same idea, just rook captures on e6, and you get destroyed here. For example, f captures, queen to e7 check, and then the rook comes into the game. It's very similar to what actually happens in the game. Ding now played rook to e8, sort of to stop this sacrifice, and now Fabi plays pawn to c4. It's a tricky move that wants to gain control over the e4 square. If you capture or advance the pawn, rook e4 followed by rook to h4 checkmate. So instead, after c4, Ding now plays rook to b8 because, well, there just aren't that many good moves, but now he allows the sacrifice. Rook captures on e6 was played, and he was in this position on move 31 that Ding Liren resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So that's what I'm asking you here. On move 25, and that's 6 moves before Ding resigned. Was this so hard to miss? What's up with this? How does a world champion miss knight captures on g6? Once knight f5 is played, of course, this instantly starts blinking in your mind. Now, for those of you who might say, okay, I'm criticizing Ding too much, who am I to criticize a world champion? Not at all. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just asking a question, and if I'm wrong, feel free to pitch in, and maybe it's a really complicated move to miss. I don't know. But yeah, and also here in rook, after rook captures on e6, of course it's winning, but still you could give it a go. Like maybe something happens. Maybe it can still be played. For example, f captures on e6. Now queen to e7 with check. Let's say king to h8. Rook captures on e6. Now you have to capture, otherwise you get checkmated. Captures, and now it's very, very hard to play. For example, rook to b7. You defend the knight. Now c captures on d5. Also, you had to play a rook here, because if you move the knight, then queen to e5 with check would pick up that rook on b8. And now let's say pawn to c4, queen to c6, you attack the rook and the knight, the rook moves, you capture the pawn, and of course white is winning. But I mean, it's not impossible. Like knight f6, queen to d4 attacks the knight and rook defends. Now you advance the pawn, d6, let's say king g7. You could, okay, first g4, of course we want to win the knight. Let's say this, king to g8, g5 attacks the knight, knight d7, g6, we attack the rook to f6, and now queen to g4. You put pressure on the knight. Let's say rook captures on d6, and now you play queen to c4 with check, and after king to g7, something like queen f7 check, forcing the king to h6, and now finally queen f4 will pick up the rook. So this is, of course, very, very much winning, and continuing past this point would be, well, it's like Fabi maybe doesn't win this one time out of 100, but it's still, I mean, it's still possible. It has happened before. It happened to everyone, and yeah, it just shows that Ding he, of course, he was unhappy with the blunder, but he instantly resigned the game after he made the blunder. So not, I mean, I could be wrong here, but at least I'm expecting, incredible fighting spirit from the world champion, regardless of the position. So if I'm dead wrong here, feel free to also mention that in the comments. Yeah, but I don't know. I just didn't like how it went from here. For those of you who are fans of maybe Game of Thrones, the television series, Ding's moves before queen to c6 were like season 1 to 3, and Ding's moves after queen to c6 were all the other seasons. So yeah, I mean, something like that. But yeah, very nicely done by Fabi. I mean, he is the favorite going into this matchup. He is, other than Magnus, the only 2800 player, but still very, very hard to imagine Ding missing knight captures on g7. For those of you who missed the previous video for whatever reason, these are the standings. Now, Pragnananda leading the tournament with 5.5, as he did win in Classical. Fabiano Caruana also won in Classical, so 5 points. Hikaru Nakamura on 4. Alireza 3.5. Magnus on 3 points in 5th place. And Ding Liren in last place with 2.5 points. And also, Fabi gets closer and closer to Magnus with every win. He's currently on 28.08. And Magnus, with that loss to Pragnananda yesterday, if you haven't seen the game, I do suggest you check it out. Will be the first link in the description below, on 28-22. And like I've mentioned in the previous video, Fabi almost overtook Magnus as the #1 highest rated player in the world, at least in live ratings, during their World Chess Championship match in London, where it was up to 1 game. They were almost equal in rating, but Magnus survived, and well, the rest is history. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. What can I say? Very nicely done by Fabi, as usual. I would like to thank Emir Zecic, Barry Gerald Larkin, Christopher Drake, Richard Nickerson, and Ivan Sterling for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but mostly covering the Norway Chess until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.